Within the pages of the Bible, Rachel's story unfolds as an enthralling account of deep love, striking deceptions, and remarkable resilience. Her life, filled with significant events and spiritual lessons, continues to influence and inspire, demonstrating the timeless relevance of her experiences. From the enchanting first encounter with Jacob to the complexities of the challenges they faced together, Rachel's life is a saga of trials and triumphs. Through her adversities, she emerges as a figure of great significance, whose strength and faith shape not only her own story, but also those of the generations that follow. Exploring Rachel's fascinating story invites us to consider how love, betrayal, and perseverance echo in our own lives. Her journey challenges us to face our difficulties with hope and wisdom, learning that the most challenging moments can bring the most valuable lessons. Jacob left his homeland in Beersheba and traveled to Haran to escape the wrath of his brother Esau, from whom he had cunningly taken both the birthright and the paternal blessing with the help of his mother Rebekah. Rebekah also suggested that he flee to his uncle Laban's house in Haran and seek a wife among his family members, thus avoiding marrying a local woman who did not share his faith and family traditions. Arriving in the Haran region, Jacob finds himself in a field where shepherds are gathered with their flocks around a well, waiting to remove the stone that covers the entrance to the well and give water to the sheep. In this setting, Rachel appears leading her father's flock. She is introduced as Laban's younger daughter, Jacob's mother's niece. Rachel is distinguished by her stunning beauty and immediately catches Jacob's attention. Jacob, recognizing Rachel as a family member and moved by a combination of familial duty and instant attraction, takes the initiative to help her. He rolls the stone from the well alone, an act that would normally require the strength of several men, thus demonstrating his strength and diligence to impress Rachel and facilitate her work. After assisting with the sheep, Jacob introduces himself to Rachel, revealing their family connection, and, moved to tears, kisses her as a gesture of familial affection and relief at finding a home away from home. Rachel, realizing the importance of the visitor, runs to inform her father Laban about Jacob. Laban, recognizing Jacob as his own kin, rushes to meet him, embraces him, and takes him home, where Jacob explains his situation and is welcomed. Jacob falls in love with Rachel at first sight and makes a deal with his uncle Laban to marry Rachel, working for 7 years. After the 7 years of work, Jacob, eager to marry Rachel, approaches Laban, requesting, "Give me my wife, for my days are complete." This request reflects the fulfillment of his part of the agreement and his desire to finally unite with Rachel. Laban organizes a large wedding feast, which was customary at the time. However, at night, in an act of deception, Laban sends Leah, his older daughter, instead of Rachel, to the bridal chamber. Due to the traditions of the time, the bride would be veiled, and this, combined with the darkness and possibly the influence of the wine from the feast, allows Laban to execute his plan without Jacob realizing the switch until the following morning. The next morning, Jacob discovers the deception and confronts Laban, who justifies himself by saying that it is not customary in his place to marry the younger daughter before the first. Laban then proposes that Jacob finish the bridal week with Leah and then also marry Rachel, provided he agrees to serve another 7 years. Jacob, driven by his love for Rachel, accepts the proposal. The Bible states that Rachel was barren. God saw that Rachel was barren while Leah, her sister, could have children. This situation causes great distress for Rachel, who feels pressured both by the culture and by family expectations to produce offspring. She sees her sister Leah have several children, which further increases her sadness and sense of isolation. Rachel, in her desperation, approaches Jacob and expresses her suffering. "Give me children, or I shall die." The intensity of this request shows the depth of her pain and the pressure she feels. Jacob responds angrily, saying that it is not in his place who prevented her from having children. Rachel then decides to give her servant, Bilhah, to Jacob as a concubine, so that she can have children through her. Bilhah gives birth to 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Rachel names the children and expresses relief and gratitude for having managed to have children, albeit indirectly, which provides her with a sense of accomplishment and status in the family. Rachel's barrenness is a central point in her narrative. While Leah, her sister, has several children with Jacob, Rachel remains unable to conceive. This causes great emotional distress, exacerbated by the cultural expectations of the time that valued women primarily for their ability to bear children. This is a moment of deep emotional crisis for Rachel, highlighting her desperation and the social pressure to become a mother. Jacob responds angrily, not out of lack of empathy, but because he also feels powerless in this situation, as fertility is not in his hands, but in those of God. This arrangement reflects the extreme to which Rachel was willing to go to mitigate the shame of sterility and try to secure her place and inheritance within the family. The introduction of Bilhah into Jacob's relationship with Rachel not only changed the dynamics between the sisters Rachel and Leah, but also added a new layer of complexity to the already intricate family structure. The situation increased the rivalry between Rachel and Leah, exacerbating tensions and jealousy. This development shows us how cultural practices of the time deeply influence personal decisions, reflecting the emotional and social challenges faced by these biblical figures. Within the context of seeking solutions for her sterility, Rachel comes across an opportunity she believes could help her: the mandrakes. These plants were known for their supposed fertility properties and are mentioned in Genesis 30:14, when Reuben, Leah's son, finds mandrakes in the field and brings them to his mother. Rachel, seeing this as a chance to conceive, asks Leah to give her some of the mandrakes. The belief in the properties of the mandrakes reflects the ancient practices and hopes linked to fertility and Rachel's intense desire for children. The negotiation between Rachel and Leah for the mandrakes is a tense and revealing moment. Rachel is willing to make an unusual deal, allowing Leah to spend another night with Jacob in exchange for the mandrakes, as described in Genesis 30:15. This episode shows Rachel's desperation and how far she was willing to go to try to resolve her situation of sterility. Rachel's willingness to negotiate time with her own husband in exchange for a possibility of fertility illustrates the complexity of emotions and relationships within this family. However, ironically, it is not Rachel who benefits from the mandrakes, but Leah, who ends up conceiving another child after this episode. This unfolding of events, detailed in Genesis 30:17, underlines the sovereignty of God in matters of life and birth, regardless of human interventions. This outcome not only reinforces the idea that human solutions are often ineffective in the face of divine plans, but also highlights the complex web of relationships and the dynamics of power and desire within Jacob's family. After years of anguish and frustrated attempts, Rachel's prayer is finally answered. In Genesis 30:22-23, it is reported that God remembered Rachel, heard her prayers, and opened her womb. The birth of Joseph marks a significant turning point in Rachel's life, bringing her joy and relief after years of sterility and emotional suffering. The name Joseph means "he adds," reflecting Rachel's desire to have more children beyond this one. As she says, "May the Lord add to me another son." This moment is of immense joy for Rachel, as it marks the removal of her shame in a society that values motherhood. This event not only alters Rachel's status within her family, but also redefines her own perception of herself and her relationship with God. Joseph was not an ordinary son. His birth carries with it a promise of greatness and divine blessing. Genesis 37:3 highlights that he became Jacob's beloved son, for whom he made a coat of many colors, symbolizing his favoritism and the expectations placed on him. Joseph, from an early age, showed qualities that would later distinguish him as a leader and governor of Egypt. The birth of Joseph not only brought consolation to Rachel, but also deeply impacted the destiny of the entire nation of Israel. Joseph's story serves as a powerful reminder of God's providential care, which, through adversities and challenges, prepares his chosen ones for greater purposes. Even in the most painful and seemingly unjust circumstances, such as Rachel's long wait, God was weaving a story of redemption and purpose. The role that Joseph would play in preserving Israel during the years of famine in Egypt shows how God's plans often unfold in mysterious and wonderful ways. As the story of Jacob and his family in Haran unfolded, tensions between Jacob and Laban began to grow. Jacob and Laban had a complicated relationship. Jacob had worked for Laban for many years, initially to marry Rachel and later to form his own wealth. However, Laban frequently changed the terms of the agreement and tried to take advantage of Jacob. In Genesis 31:7, Jacob mentions that Laban changed his wages 10 times. Jacob had a dream in which God told him to return to the land of his parents, Genesis 31:3. Jacob interpreted this as a sign that it was time to leave. Laban's sons began to resent Jacob's success and accused him of stealing their father's wealth, Genesis 31:1-2. This created a hostile environment for Jacob and his family. Jacob wanted to establish his own household and have independence rather than continuing under Laban's control. Jacob decided to leave without notifying Laban to avoid a direct confrontation. He took advantage of a moment when Laban was away to gather his family and belongings and leave quickly. This event is described in Genesis 31:17-21, where it is said that Jacob fled with all that he had and crossed the Euphrates River toward the land of Canaan. Rachel took her father's idols during Jacob's escape from Laban's house. This event is described in Genesis 31:19. While Laban was shearing his sheep, Rachel stole the household idols that belonged to her father. Why did Rachel do this? There are several theories about Rachel's motives: religious or spiritual attachment. One possible reason is that Rachel might have had a spiritual or religious attachment to the household idols. Household idols, or teraphim, were often used for worship and adoration in ancient Mesopotamia. Rachel may have taken the idols to continue her religious practices. Sentimental or familial value. Rachel may have had a sentimental attachment to the idols, perhaps considering them part of her family heritage. Superstition or protection. Another possibility is that Rachel believed the idols would offer protection or good luck during the journey. Affecting Laban's authority. The teraphim were sometimes considered symbols of authority and possession within the family. By stealing the idols, Rachel might have been trying to undermine Laban's authority or claim some kind of right, retaliation or vengeance. Given the difficult treatment Jacob and Rachel received from Laban, it is possible that Rachel took the idols as a form of retaliation or vengeance. When Laban discovered that the idols were missing, he pursued Jacob and his family. After catching up with them, Laban confronted Jacob about the missing idols. Jacob, not knowing that Rachel had stolen them, allowed Laban to search all his possessions, Genesis 31:33-35. Rachel hid the idols under the saddle of a camel and sat on them, claiming she could not stand up due to her menstrual period, thus deceiving her father and preventing him from finding the idols. The final encounter between Jacob and Laban is a moment of high tension and confrontation. Laban, after catching up with Jacob, accuses him not only of fleeing, but also of stealing the idols. Rachel, showing remarkable presence of mind, hides the idols and deceives her father, as described in Genesis 31:34-35. Laban, upon discovering that Jacob and his family had fled and that his idols had been stolen, pursues them. He catches up with Jacob at Mount Gilead. The tension rises as Laban confronts Jacob about the escape and the theft. During the search for the idols, Rachel hides them in her camel's saddle and sits on them. When Laban searches her tent, Rachel uses the excuse of being in her menstrual period to not get up, knowing that Laban would not touch the saddle for ritual purity reasons. Laban ends his search frustrated, without finding the idols. Jacob then crossed the Jordan River toward Canaan, meeting his brother Esau. Later, Jacob settled in Shechem, where he bought land. Subsequently, God instructed him to go to Bethel, where he built an altar. From Bethel, Jacob and his family traveled toward Ephrath, Bethlehem. As Jacob and his family traveled from Bethel to Ephrath, Bethlehem, Rachel goes into labor. It is a moment of great expectation, but also of extreme difficulties, as she faces a particularly difficult labor. During the labor, the midwife tries to reassure Rachel, telling her, "Do not fear, for you shall have this son." Rachel gives birth to a boy, but the delivery is complicated and puts her life at risk. Before dying, Rachel names the boy Benoni, which means son of my sorrow. However, Jacob later changes the boy's name to Benjamin, which means son of the right hand, indicating his special position and blessing despite the tragic circumstances. After giving birth, Rachel dies due to complications. Jacob buries her on the road to Ephrath near Bethlehem. He erects a pillar over her grave as a memorial, a gesture that symbolizes his grief and enduring respect for his beloved wife. This site becomes a significant landmark for the people of Israel. This confrontation not only resolves the immediate issues between Jacob and Laban, but also highlights the complexities of family relationships and the gradual transition of Jacob and his family to an independent life under God's guidance, marking a crucial step in the formation of a new national identity under the Abrahamic covenant. As we conclude our journey through the life of Rachel, we see not just a woman defined by her circumstances, but an emblematic figure whose story transcends time and space. Rachel teaches us about the strength of faith, the importance of resilience, and the power of unconditional love. Her experiences underscore that, despite the challenges we face, there is always room for growth and redemption. Now, I invite you to reflect on how stories of perseverance like Rachel's can influence your own choices and paths. How can you apply the resilience and faith demonstrated by her in your life? Is there an area where you need to reassess your convictions or strengthen your commitment? Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the notifications to continue exploring the rich stories and lessons that the Bible has to offer. Join us on this ongoing journey of discovery and inspiration.